Good Wednesday morning, friends, or afternoon, or evening, or whenever you happen to join. For those that I may not know, I'm Reverend Jennifer Finley, our Momentum and Discipleship Pastor here at First United Methodist Church in Kirksville. And this is our time, wherever you are, to take a deep breath together, to pause, to reflect on our faith together, to wonder together about what God is up to in our lives and in our world, what God is up to in our own personal lives and in our communities. I have shared before, this is such a joy. I never imagined that when we started this over 3 years ago now, that this would become such an important part of my own time with God and my own time in community. And I am grateful for each of you that join us live or that maybe catch this later. You are an important part of God showing up in my life as well. This is that time when we pause and ask, where are we sensing God at work? Where have we sensed God at work in our world, in ourselves these last few weeks? And I've been sharing that I've been thinking about this summer into this fall as a season of green, the time when we can sink our feet deep into the earth, into the soil, and to allow God to help us to learn and grow in what we call common time in the church year. It's summer, rhythms are a little bit different. And so I've been thinking and sharing with you the spiritual practices that may help us in this season of green, in this time of growth this summer and this fall. And I wondered what I might share today. And I realized when I was trying to answer the question for myself, where have I seen God? I came back to a conversation I had with one of you. I think this person may be watching, I'm not sure. But several weeks ago, we were standing in an art gallery downtown Kirksville. I was admiring the art of the artists that display there. And she came up to me and she said, we were admiring a piece of art, and she said something about, I imagine you're somebody who is really creative. Who enjoys creating. And I paused, I'll admit, it took me back for a second. I don't think of myself as creative necessarily, and certainly not in the realm of visual arts. But that moment has stuck with me, and realizing that God showed up for me in that moment, because as I heard myself answer that question and at first give I've never really been good at drawing or painting, and I never really thought about myself as creative, I also heard myself talking about the ways that I enjoy creating. The ways I enjoy creating with words, whether they're for myself or for others. The ways I enjoy creating community. And on. I thought, I actually am creative, just not in the ways that I have been trained to think about. And I was thinking about that because on Sunday we were talking about God creating. At the very beginning, when God began to create, we were talking about Genesis 1, and we're talking about what it means to be created in the image of God. And one of the ways in which we are created in the image of God is that we are created to create. And yet most of us, many of us, if asked, are you creative? We will say, no, I'm not. That's for other people. Because that concept comes with a lot of baggage for most of us. I'm sitting up here in our children's room in the top level of our church building. It's a beautiful space, as you can see, with a mural on the back wall. And this is a space that is often during camps and vacation Bible school, the art room, the place where children create. And many of us are probably familiar with art rooms, whether it's from our public schooling or other places. And for some of us, those were beautiful spaces where we felt free and creative. For others of us, they may have been spaces that felt like we weren't enough, like we weren't good at something, like we weren't good at drawing or we weren't good at painting. Through no fault of our art teachers who probably just wanted to let us know that we could be creative, many of us have found baggage with the fact that creativity is for somebody else. Creativity is for someone who does something well enough to sell it, or to market it, or to put it on a gallery wall. Through no fault of the people around us, many of us have somehow internalized from the time we were kids that we're not creative, that word is for somebody else. And yet, we were created in the image of God, each and every one of us. And if God created, then part of what it means to be created in the image of God is to create. So I'm wondering, what does it look like for you to create? Perhaps it's creating with your words. If you're a teacher, an educator, perhaps it's creating community in your classroom. Perhaps it's gardening. Perhaps it's cooking. Perhaps it's something entirely different that no one will ever see, but you know that it's a creative outlet for you. Perhaps your creativity shows up in tending, lovingly tending to what others have created before you. Those are all outgrowths of the image of God in us. And that's important because this summer in our time together, we're thinking about spiritual practices, the things that might not seem like spiritual practices to us, but are ways in which we connect with God. And being creative is one of those ways. If God is creative and if God created us, then we connect to God when we express that creativity. So when we cook, when we create community, when we create with our words, when we garden, when we create something entirely just for ourselves, we are connecting with God, and that is a spiritual practice. It is one of those practices that root us and ground us in a season of growth and a season of green. And what that looks like for each of us is different, and what it looks like for us may be different in different seasons. The ways I create and connect with God are different in the summer and in the fall than they are in the winter. Perhaps in the winter you snuggle up on the couch and you knit or crochet. That's not my jam. I wish it was. But perhaps in the summer you create community by going for a hike with a friend. Perhaps in the summer you create by gardening or by, I don't garden, I try to keep my hanging baskets alive, but I feel like just doing that expresses a little bit of tending that helps me express that image of God in myself. So I'm wondering for you in this season of green, what is it that allows you to connect with God by expressing, by creating? By creating on your own with God or creating with others. I mentioned that many of us have hard memories maybe of elementary school art rooms. But I wanted to share with you this morning this one, because this one is slightly different. See if I can show this to you. Oh, is it not gonna let me do it? There we go. So the wall that I'm looking at, that I hope that you are now seeing, opposite what you were seeing, is God created us to be creative. I'll let you see that full wall. God created us to be creative. Friends, God created us uniquely and all to be creative in our own kind of ways. So I hope and pray that you will find some outlets, some way to create, to connect with God this summer. And if that is something that you would like to take a picture of, share it with us in the comments. But also if it's something that isn't like that, share it with somebody. Simply acknowledge that there is something you are creating that is bringing you joy, that is connecting you with God. Go in peace, my friends.